In this lesson, we're going to take a look at a different type of array, a multi-dimensional array, or in this case, a two-dimensional array, which will represent a table of information. In other words, we're going to create rows and columns of data and process those. Creating a two-dimensional array is very similar to creating a one-dimensional array, except we add a second set of brackets to represent the columns. So let's say if we had one list of data in a single dimension array, we'll call that the rows, then we'd have a second dimension for columns. So we have that second set of brackets, and then in our constructor we're going to tell the compiler the size of the array by putting some data in there. In this case, we want 3 elements for rows, 3 elements for columns, or 9 elements altogether. The way we'd assign data to that would be by specifying each cell position. So I'm going to do it like so. So here I am filling out the first row. Whoops, let's go back one. Now we'll do the second row. Whoops. And I'm just going to work through here real quick. You can follow my typing. Now we're ready to do the third row. Okay, so here we've assigned data to the array. Another way to do that, and I'll do it with a different array. I'll still use integer as the example, but it doesn't really matter here, is to fill it in with data. So you see what I'm doing? I'm creating little initialization lists to represent each row. So the first row of data is 1, 2, 3. The second row of data is 3, 4, 5, or 4, 5, 6, and the third row of data is 7, 8, 9. That's another way to do it, although we're going to stick with the way we did it here before. Now, to process a two-dimensional array, we're going to use nested for loops, so that our outer loop represents the row and the inner loop represents the column. And to demonstrate that, I'm going to display all of these grades. So I'm going to write my first and here I'm just going to hard code that value for the columns. And then now we'll have our inner loop for the columns, and then we'll just display system out print grades row and column, like so. And then we want to do a let's get that back. Then we want to do a system out print line to put a space between each, or to put a line break after each row of numbers, and then output. So let's take a look. We'll compile. No errors, so let's run our program. So we could do a little bit better here. Let's make one change. Let's add a space. Let's compile. Let's close, and then let's run it again. There we go. So you see there's the first row, 8, 81, 85. There's a second row, 75, 78, 73. And there's a third row, 99, 91, 90. From that, and let me bring the code back up, you can figure out how to do things like sum each row to get the average for, let's say, these 80 grades. The average is going to be somewhere, in the mid-80s there. And then the same thing for the second row of 70s, and then for the third row of 90s. And I'll be providing you in the little quiz at the end of this section an opportunity to do exactly that. But just by looking at the pattern I've given you here of nested for loops, you should be able to figure out very easily how to do that processing. So that wraps up this lesson on two-dimensional arrays, and now we're going to move on and look at how to use arrays and array lists in functions both as parameters and as return values.